I couldn't be in Denver to testify against HB 23-1230 tomorrow, but I wanted to do this on record because I think it's important. They're not focusing on the right problem, or they're not even trying to find the right problem. They just want to blame the gun. So HB 23-1230 is to prohibit assault weapons in Colorado. Their words. Okay. So this was going to be my speech. I probably wouldn't be able to get all the way through it there. But I'll get all the way through it here. So, excuse me. Let me get a drink here. All right, good afternoon. My name is David Williams. I'm from El Paso County. I'm a former 18 Bravo Special Forces Weapons Sergeant. I have made Colorado my home. I come here to testify in strong opposition to HB 23-1230. I know that I'm probably the minority in this case due to the political views associated with inner cities, specifically Denver. But this is horrible legislation to try to curb firearm violence or firearm-related violence. Moreover, this assembly is wasting time in regards to the several rulings throughout the country that have further solidified the Second Amendment and the right to keep and bear arms, specifically those in common use, the AR-15. I've noticed in this bill there are several exceptions, namely the U.S. military and the U.S. law enforcement. And a lot of people who oppose AR-15s and the like argue that it's not a defensive weapon. And this bill directly accuses the AR-15 and other platforms like it of being so-called assault weapons. The last I checked, the military services are supposed to defend this nation against enemies and both foreign and domestic. And law enforcement are supposed to protect and defend their communities. So if the AR-15 is an assault weapon, your words, not mine, what does that say? And what does the state, federal, or local government have planned where they need an exemption for the AR-15? But you're going to ban the citizens from obtaining those. Call me a conspiracy theorist, but if you call any weapon system in the military or law enforcement they use an assault weapon, I'm going to assume some of those same weapons and government agencies will be assaulting our freedoms by force in the future. Furthermore, the first item on the bill defines the 50 caliber 12.7 ammunition. I'd like to know what mass shootings are using 50 caliber ammunition. This is laughable. Representative Epps and Fields would like you to believe that it's about saving lives, but it's clearly not. It's only a ploy to appeal to their base, and it's without a doubt completely unconstitutional. The proof lies in statistical data in 2020. This is the latest I can find that was complete from the CDC. There were 24.9 was the death rate for overdoses, compared to 15.4 was the death rate for firearm-related violence. So, one could only deduce that if this is really about saving lives, this body should be addressing leading causes of death first. So back on the firearm-related deaths. We're looking at 922 deaths total in 2020, anyway, from firearm-related violence. And that's if we include all the suicides that were firearm-related. And if we are including those, then what happened to my body, my choice? So, Governor Polis then signed into law HB 23-1230, defelonizing the possession of Schedule 1 and 2 substitutes in 2019. and it took 3 years to see the error. And at least, specifically, the fentanyl, to reverse some portions of that 2019 act. With HB 1362 last year, it was still not enough to curb the 1,492 overdoses. So you got 922 deaths from firearms and 1,492 from overdoses and drugs. But yet, we're going to allow substance 1s and 2s to kind of roam without any consequences. Very interesting. So I need to remind this body that the possession, the use, and the sale of drugs are not constitutionally protected, but the right to keep and bear arms is, and limiting citizens' rights to keep and bear arms is off the table. The Bruin Court decision has made it painfully clear that any laws to regulate the Second Amendment must be in this nation's history, text, and tradition. Traditionally, citizens were, at one time, required to have firearms to serve in the militia. Of course, at the time, they were very outdated firearms of today's standards. So, the AR-15 rifle is a modern-day musket, with millions in circulation, common use, in various calibers. The Colorado Constitution states that military forces of the state shall be divided into 2 classes: an organized militia and an unorganized militia. Part of the organized militia are a federally registered National Guard, hence Colorado National Guard, and what's known as the State Defense Force. The State Defense Force is to organize to protect the state in the event that the National Guard becomes federally active, let's say in a world war or something of that nature. The militia are the people that can be called to defend the state in the absence of a National Guard, basically. With the potential global power order change looming on the horizon and all the conflict that's happening in the world today, it would be in our best interest to have our armed citizens armed to the teeth for the defense of this state, this country, the American way of life, and the ability to combat potential communist incursion. The bill shows apparent ignorance of firearms in general in paragraph 6, subsection I. And quote, the typical assault weapon bullet leaves the barrel of the gun 3 times faster than the typical handgun bullet and is designed to fragment and tumble. The high velocity of the typical assault weapon bullet damages and destroys tissues as it travels through the body, causing organs to become liquefied and causing catastrophic internal bleeding. Okay. Almost all of it incorrect. There's no typical quote-unquote assault weapon, and all ammunition tumbles when it hits anything that interrupts its trajectory path. All of it. Most ammunition is designed to fragment in the use of defense, and ammunition not designed to fragment are for target shooting, but still just as lethal. Organs do not liquefy. However, if an organ is hit by any caliber, it will dump blood into the body and outside of the body if there are any cavities. As a big game hunter, and a combat veteran, I've seen the damage of several calibers, regardless of its velocity. The statements made in the bill are scare tactics for those who know nothing about firearms, calibers, velocities, or damage thereof. Representative Epps and Fields, you should be ashamed of yourselves for misleading the Colorado people to believe that weapons defined in this bill are more lethal than others with the overgeneralization of so-called assault weapons. Law enforcement is completely overwhelmed with responsibilities without the pay that should be associated with that responsibility. El Paso County alone has about 8 sheriffs on the street at one time for 250,000 people in a 2,130 square area. I'll say that again. 8 at one time for 250,000 people. In Colorado Springs, The police department there has about 950 employees, and if we're assuming that they're all beat cops, for example, which they're not, that would be one officer per 530 citizens, with a population of about 500,000 people. Not to mention El Paso County Detention Center is sometimes overfull, although it is one of the largest in the area, if not the largest in the area. How in the world do you think law enforcement can do its job with those numbers alone, never mind the political, cultural, and racial criticism that they have to endure each and every day? With respect to firearms-related violence, mass shootings are a small fraction of the violence this state endures and the country, and blaming the gun is not conducive to finding a viable, feasible, and effective solution. Mass shootings are a complicated problem where one single action will not prevent or stop mass shootings. In fact, regardless if this bill passes or fails, there will be no doubt more mass shootings as the trend continues. The Violence Project has done a massive amount of research on mass shootings in particular, and they have recently stated in an email, our research in the histories of mass shootings shows that perpetrators are nearly always in crisis prior to the shooting, and perpetrators tell others about their plans and study former perpetrators, end quote. They study former perpetrators, which means whoever the next mass shooting is will likely study this one or the next one or the past ones or whatever. So therefore, those who are in crisis, who plan to commit a mass shooting, will likely tell somebody about it after they study someone else that's already done it. It's this body's job to combat those actions with real legislation and not some facade for your base and reputation. Furthermore, the Violence Project also states that over half of the weapons are used in mass shootings are legal, which means the other half are illegal. Therefore, restricting firearms in general will do nothing to stop mass shootings or any violence with firearms. In the case of the East High shooting, the Denver School Board opted to cut ties with the Denver police after the horrible George Floyd wrongful death, discriminating against law enforcement because of the action of others in another state, reducing the security of the schools. Instead of wasting time, money, and effort with attempts to infringe on the Second Amendment, this body should focus on current laws, how to get the bad guys off the street, how to keep them off the street, how to keep our schools safe with armed guards, metal detectors, and random backpack searches, promoting and encouraging citizens to defend themselves by getting training from reputable trainers, encouraging the youth to keep their heads out of their phones and being situational aware, empowering the law enforcement to do what's right by hammering them when they step out of line, increasing the pay for law enforcement to help recruiting efforts, building bigger detention centers to keep up with the growing population, finding the actual problems around violence and taking steps to mitigate those, and building better communities through parent-child and matrimonial workshops that encourage bonding, closeness, and timeless relationships. I have a few questions. I know they're rhetorical, but I still have to ask them. So what is the next step when the legislation fails, if it's passed as a bill? What's the next step? Logically, it would be, well, that didn't work, so we'll just ban more guns. Because that's what you guys do. You blame the gun. If the next step is to ban more firearms, then when will the infringement stop exactly? And if the infringement will not stop, or rather you will not stop infringing, then when are you going to step down for violating your oath? You all swore an oath to protect the Constitution of the United States to the best of your ability, but I present to you that endorsement of this bill, either covertly or overtly, is not the best of your ability to support the Constitution of the United States, knowing full well that HB 23-1230 goes against the United States Constitution. Tack out.